Can you read the title? A is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Miramar, Florida, urging the State Fire Marshal to allow the city to provide input and participate in the procurement of a consultant to conduct the study of construction materials mining activities study, urging the State Fire Marshal to include homes in the areas near White Rock Quarry's North Mining Site as an area of analysis for the study, and urging the State Fire Marshal to include in the scope of services for the study an analysis of mental and/or emotional effects of blasting and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Obviously, as a city and as a commission, we were successful in our efforts to obtaining state funding to study the impacts of blastings in the state of Florida, and it escaped the veto pen of the governor. And however, obviously, the battle isn't won because there's many more steps. And after having some conversations with the city attorney, as well as attending a town hall meeting, I was invited by the mayor of Miami Lakes, who had the fire marshal's office and some consultants in to provide information to the residents. And there were also other Miramar residents in attendance as well. There are some time-sensitive issues regarding the study. Based on the legislation that was passed, although we received the funding, the fire marshal's department actually is going to determine the basis of the study. It will identify where the study sites will be. There's no guarantee White Rock Quarry site would be one of those selected sites. The state's budget starts July 1st. So the clock will be ticking. So this resolution simply takes, it continues our direction in regards to standing with the residents to ensure that the city is put in the best position to get results, to improve the quality of life, and to diminish as much as possible the impacts of blastings. So what this resolution basically is asking is that the fire marshal allow the city to provide input and participate in the procurement of a consultant to conduct the study of construction material mining activities. We want to ensure that the White Rock Quarry site is one of the sites to be included. Obviously, there are other quarries, in particular in Central Florida, that could potentially be sites for studying. We're also that which is a big issue that have come from residents and from the blasting committee, the desire to have the health impacts of blasting included in the study. And while at the meeting in Miami Lakes, speaking with the fire marshal's office, that there is potentially an opportunity to see how the blasting study could potentially incorporate perhaps a parallel study that would also measure or study the health impacts of the study. Obviously, the funding and direction of how that will take place is up for discussion, but it keeps our issues in play, and it gives a formal statement from the city that we are making these requests. And finally, we will be reaching out to the fire marshal's office to discuss this issue in regards at the staff level, to look at the technical aspects of how all of these requests can be incorporated. So with this resolution, it formally makes the request to the state fire marshal, and perhaps will pave the way for us to keep our concerns and our priorities for the community in the forefront. And if the city attorney would like to add any other comments, or if there are any questions, we'll take them at this time.
Motion.
I have nothing to add.
What's that?
I have nothing to add. That was
Okay,
very comprehensive.
Thank you.
Observations.
Okay. I'll just look down.
Just a comment from me.
Commissioner Colburn.
Thank you. Well, thank you for introducing this resolution to us, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, if you would keep us abreast of of these actions as they happen. I know you had a meeting and you're saying we. So if there's something that's going on, just keep us abreast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, what I did leave out was the meeting was about maybe 2-3 weeks ago. Actually, I got the phone call the day of or the day before. I think it was the day of, if I'm not mistaken. And we actually had, I think, something going on in the city at the time, but I was able to make it. So it was, I wasn't aware of their meeting. I just, the mayor had reached out to me and asked to come. So I brought back the information, discussed with our city attorneys, and because we are about to go on break, and we won't return until the end of August, we would perhaps have lost weeks. Perhaps the fire marshal would have already begun their process in terms of their procurement process. So right now, the fire marshal said that this is the opportune time for us to be having these discussions.
Appreciate it.
Questions?
Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor Barnes.
Observation. One of my only concern is whether the funding that is or is going to be made will be able to cover these additional concerns, because that would make it even more comprehensive. And not only that, probably more important, it would give our residents to formalize the complaints that they brought to our meetings in that official report. So that, if only that component alone makes this a valuable undertaking. And we need to proceed ASAP.
Great observation, Vice Mayor Barnes. Actually, one of the discussions that came up during the meeting is that because Miramar isn't the only community that is impacted, you have Palm Springs North, you have Miami Lakes and other surrounding communities. We don't know if the allocation is sufficient to study simply the construction materials and mining activities, and it could also cover the health components. But the main thing is that if it's not, it might present an opportunity where there may be an interlocal agreement if all the impacted communities may be willing to support the funding of that study if the state could not. Obviously, that would take the agreement of this governing body and the respective governing bodies of the impacted communities. And the other thing is that we really would want to ensure that, regardless of the funding source, that with the state's endorsement that recognize the health impacts, whether funded by the state or by some interlocal funding from the impacted areas, that the whole goal of all of this is any future legislation that would come out of these studies would have to be based on the results that would come from the studies. And would the state accept the materials testing activity as well as the health component, because the study and the results would be the basis of any legislation that would be that some bill would be drafted by a state rep or a state senator to draft policy that would then trickle down to perhaps to give policy to govern these activities. At the end of the day, we need facts, scientific data to be able to make our political arguments to fight in Tallahassee to get some reprieve. So to keep us focused on to keep this continuum moving, the more we're engaged, the more we're involved with the fire marshal's office, and if we can influence in any way to get the results that our residents are looking for, I think puts us in the best position, and that's the reason for this resolution.
And if I may talk about who are scientists from who are not scientists, I think what is important is that this data be brought to the public domain, so at least it is out there, and who wants to regard it or disregard it will, I'm hoping, have to come with sufficient scientific counters to reject this. But I think this is probably the most important part of it, and I'm just hoping and praying that the funding will be able to cover this, because if we are to listen to some of what our residents have told us, and I said it in meetings, I don't know if I could deal with it. It is one thing to have the impact of the blasting on your home, but you don't know when it is going to happen. And we've heard from our residents how unsettling it is, especially if you think about, and we've gotten evidence of that, especially when you think about seniors being at home in the middle of the day and this happening. So I'm just hoping that this goes through.
Are there any questions or comments? May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Record the votes.
Vice Mayor Barnes?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Colburn?
Yes.
Commissioner Riggs?
Yes.
Mayor Messam?
Yes.